board, and that, sir, is what we're planning to deliver.
Grant Robertson.
Speaker, the Appropriation 2011-12 estimates bill could be read as an innocuous set of figures. That's essentially what we see here. It's the estimates. There's some big numbers sitting beside things. There's some smaller numbers sitting beside others. For instance, we could look at the corrections budget and we could see something over $800 million being spent on prison custodial services and a somewhat smaller amount of money, about $140 million on reintegration and rehabilitation services, and we could say that might indicate some of the priorities of this government. But, Mr Speaker, this document is much more than just a set of figures. This document should represent the plan that the government has for the country, for the future of New Zealand. It's not just numbers, it should be the vision, the bold outline of where a government wants to take a country. And when we look at this document, Mr Speaker, it is sadly lacking in any kind of vision or any kind of plan. It doesn't deliver New Zealanders hope. Where's the sunny optimism of the Prime Minister before the last election and in the first year of this term? The man who said that there was going to be this great wealth of opportunity for New Zealanders. Ambitious for New Zealand was the slogan. We were going to turbo. The poor Governor-General had to say turbocharged in his first speech when this government came into office. And where's that all gone, Mr Speaker? It's gone, it's completely gone in what John Armstrong from the New Zealand Herald, someone who I have the odd difference of opinion with, but John Armstrong, Mr Mallard does as well, but John Armstrong from the New Zealand Herald, Mr Quinn, he described this budget as a fairy tale of high hopes. A fairy tale of high hopes. And Mr Speaker, like most fairy tales, this one begins once upon a time. Because once upon a time there was a politician called John Key who smiled and waved a lot. He was relaxed. He liked to kick the tyres with his friends. But most of all, he was ambitious for New Zealand. His friend Bill said it was great to work with him as he jumped from cloud to cloud. He liked to tell stories to his friends about catching up with Australia on wages, and he was fond of making other promises to his friends as well, like not increasing GST, not selling assets. John was a happy camper, but things haven't turned out so well in this fairy tale, Mr Speaker. They certainly haven't turned out well for the thousands of Kiwi families who now rely on food banks. In my own electorate, a relatively wealthy electorate, a 30% increase in the use of food banks under this government, Mr Speaker. Things have certainly not turned out well for those on the minimum wage. And it's important to note that the minimum wage is now worth $16 a week less than it was a year ago. $16 a week less than it was a year ago. And that's one reason, Mr Speaker, why I am proud of the Labour Party's promise to increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour. $15 per hour. I am proud of that because that will put money in the pockets of working families. It will put money in the pockets of working families. So this budget, Mr Speaker, does not contain anything that resembles a plan for driving this economy forward. And Amy Adams, in her speech, talked about the fears and worries and concerns that New Zealanders have when they look at what's happening in economies around the world. Well, what's this government's reaction to that? To stand there with its hands in its pockets on the sidelines doing nothing. That's the reaction of this government, Mr Speaker, hoping really hard that the budget will deliver 170,000 new jobs. Mr Speaker, there is nothing in this appropriation document that tells me the government has any kind of actual plan to deliver 170,000 new jobs, let alone 4% growth, which is in here as well. Mr Speaker, they are hoping and they have no plan to get past that hope. And the question we have to ask when we look at this is, what is the basis for any kind of optimism from the government speakers? We are on negative credit watch. 155,000 people are unemployed. We've got record high inflation. There is nothing that this government has done that they have brought to this House that should give New Zealanders any hope whatsoever that they can deliver on the hopes that are in this budget. It is, as John Armstrong says, a fairy tale of high hopes. And we have heard every budget from this government that good times are ahead. And we just have to wait. And each time, Bill English has failed to live up to those expectations. Each time, the high hopes, the fairy tale of high hopes, has carried on. It is not good enough, Mr. Speaker, to have a government that promises in the never never and never delivers. And the tragedy, Mr. Speaker, is that all the policies from this government are about the short term rather than the long term. As I said, Mr. Speaker, this document should be a plan. It should be some kind of roadmap for New Zealanders to follow. And the question I'm asking and being asked as I move around New Zealanders, how can we actually create a better New Zealand than this government? And that is why the Labour Party does have a plan. And we've been criticised for where is our policy. Well, our policy's out there now, and it's a plan that's based on a fair tax policy and growing a sustainable economy. My question to the other side of the House is, are they going to actually release a policy at this election? No. Or are they simply going to rely on what has failed for the last 3 years? Is there a policy? It's a genuine question. There's no answer from the other side because there is no plan. What we have on this side of the House is a plan for a better New Zealand because, Mr. Speaker, I think New Zealand is a better place than one where money is taken out of early childhood education. I think New Zealand is a better place than that. New Zealanders are better than that. I think New Zealand is a better place than where we sell off our assets to get some short-term money gain. That means they're gone forever. And this is a government, Mr. Speaker, who tells us New Zealanders will be at the front of the queue for those assets, and the reality is they have no way of knowing how that will happen. Time and again in this House, Bill English has failed to answer the question, how will New Zealanders be at the front of the queue for assets that are going to be sold? Mr. Speaker, those assets should not be sold. They are assets built up by generations of New Zealanders. They are part of our history and they should be part of our future. We must not let important assets like the electricity industry go offshore. We saw it with Contact Energy, and under this government they will disappear completely. Mr. Speaker, we need a plan that is based on good monetary policy that supports our exporters, overseas investment rules that actually ensure that Kiwi land stays in Kiwi hands, procurement policy that encourages Kiwi jobs, a capital gains tax, the first $5,000 tax-free, GST off fresh fruit and vegetables. All of these things are important, Mr. Speaker, but in the end, they're only one aspect of what a government should be about. A government should be about supporting New Zealanders, investing in New Zealanders, and making sure that New Zealanders have the skills and the knowledge to develop our economy. There's nothing in this document, Mr. Speaker, that speaks to supporting economic development. Where's the support for new technologies? Where's the support for clean technology? Where's the way of adding value to our primary industries? This government is standing on the sidelines, hands in pockets, hoping the market will provide. Well, the truth is, Mr. Speaker, New Zealanders need more than that. We are a better country than that, Mr. Speaker. We're a country where we do look after each other. We're not a country that stands by when $800,000 is taken off women's refuge. We're not a country that stands by when money is taken away from mental health providers in our community who are forced to close down like the one in Marlborough recently. These are things that New Zealanders do not like. New Zealanders are people who believe that we look after each other, that we support each other and we invest in our people. This government and this appropriation bill have nothing of that in it. Labor is putting forward a coherent plan. It's a plan that's about a fair tax system, about investing in skills and training, keeping our assets and not selling New Zealanders' future down the river. We're concerned about our economy, not somebody else's economy. That should be the basis of this appropriation bill, Mr. Speaker, and it's not. This budget is a moral failure, a fiscal failure. It does not invest in New Zealanders. We need, at this election, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that a government is elected, led by the Labour Party, that will invest in New Zealanders, that will have a fair tax system, and will ensure that New Zealanders want to stay here and come back to New Zealand. We need an environment where we provide a fair basis for all New Zealanders to achieve their potential, where we protect our environment and we support those around us. That is what this budget should have done, and it has failed to do that.
Materia Toure.
I'm pleased to stand on behalf of the